Hey there. I'm excited to announce this to you today. This is what you've been waiting for in your spiritual quest. This is something I've wanted to do for a long time, and I'm finally ready to announce it that it's ready to go. It's the Grief to Growth Community Circle. Now, this is a sanctuary where like-minded souls are united in their journey through grief and towards personal transformation. It's more than just a place. It's a beginning. It's a commitment to growth and understanding. Here you're finding not just a community, but you're entering a circle of trust and depth. You're going to engage with interactive coursework. You'll dive into exclusive podcast episodes and partake in discussions that illuminate the path from mourning to empowerment. This is a realm where every question is honored and every individual's journey is validated. To be part of this exclusive circle, visit us at grieftogrowth.com/community or look for the chat icon at the bottom of every page on the main website. Remember that entry is a privilege because I want to ensure that every member is as dedicated and genuine as you are. You must apply to join, but the journey within is worth every step. So go ahead and join us today. Check it out, grieftogrowth.com/community, and I look forward to seeing you there. Hey there, this is a special episode that's time sensitive. It's with my good friend Becky Austill-Clausen. And even though we're talking about Reiki, which is good at any time, there's a special offer that she's making for a free webinar coming up in March of 2023. You probably know that Reiki is good for physical healing. You may not know it's good for mental and spiritual healing as well, but it's also really good for afterlife communications, which I know interests a lot of my listeners. So enjoy the episode. Hey everybody, this is Brian. I'm back with another episode of Grief to Growth, and I've got with me today my good friend Rebecca Austill-Clausen. I call her Becky. Becky is awesome. You're going to really enjoy this episode with Becky. She's a super high energy person. She is an occupational therapist. She's a Reiki Master, and she's an award-winning author of the book Change Maker: How My Brother's Death Woke Up My Life. She's also an international speaker. Becky, today we're going to be talking mostly about Reiki. She's practiced Reiki for over 25 years, and she's the first person to teach Reiki at every in-person American Occupational Therapist annual conference since 2015. So when it comes to Reiki, she knows what she's talking about. And that includes the upcoming 2023 conference in Kansas City, Missouri in April. She's also the first person to teach Reiki at the annual International Association for Near-Death Studies that we all know as IANS annual conference each year since 2021. And she will be teaching at the IANS conference again in Alexandria, Virginia in late August. So in case you don't know, Reiki is a natural healing, energy healing modality, and it can actually be learned in one day. It reduces pain, stress, and anxiety, and it enhances after-death communication, which is why a lot of my listeners are interested in it. So that's all I'm going to read about Becky's bio. I want to introduce everybody to Becky Austill-Clausen.
Oh, Brian, it is such a pleasure to be back with you again. I appreciate you so much. I love the work that you do. And thank you very much for asking me to talk about Reiki. Yeah,
as I said, I'm always excited to have you back. I think this is the second or third time we've done a podcast together. You and I have taught, I've taken some of your classes. We've done some things collaboratively. And when it comes to Reiki, I guess what I'd like to start with is so people just know what it is. And I read a little bit, but let people know what Reiki is and how it can benefit them.
Sure. Thank you again. And everybody, thank you so much for being here. I've been doing Reiki, as you said, for over 25 years, and I'm an occupational therapist. And so the definition that I use for Reiki is a little bit medical. And so let me give you a thought. It is energy. So we have energy within us, around us. Everything's composed of energy. Everything natural is composed of energy. So, for example, if you go to the hospital and you have an EKG, that's a electrocardiogram. It's a Boston accent, even though I live in Pennsylvania. You're going to hear me talking with a Boston accent. So the EKG measures the beat of your heart. That's really energy. But in the United States, we don't call it energy. We say an EKG measures the beat of your heart. If you have an EEG, an electroencephalogram, that measures our brain waves. It's measuring the energy of the brain. Or if we hurt our arm and we have to have an MRI, a magnetic resonance image, what that does is it looks at the difference between healthy and impaired tissue or healthy and diseased tissue. What it's looking at is the energy differences between the health and the impairment of that particular issue. And so energy's all around us. And what Reiki does is it activates our own healing energy. It's not the Reiki practitioner that's doing the healing. They just funnel the energy. They just channel the energy from the universe to the person so that the person's own body can do their own healing.
Awesome. Thank you for that definition and what Reiki is. So how did you discover Reiki? How did you get into this?
Thank you for asking. I had no idea there was even anything like Reiki until, it was 1996. My 37-year-old brother David passed. He passed to AIDS in 1995, and I couldn't understand it. It made no sense to me at all because I think everything in life is positive, and I could find nothing positive about the fact that my 37-year-old brother David passed. So for 6 weeks, I'm filled with grief. Can't understand it. Made no sense. I was depressed. It just felt poor. 6 weeks later, after my brother passed, I was riding a horse through a Christmas tree farm. And it was a beautiful day. David passed on October 1st, 1995. This was mid-November. We had just had our first frost, and it was lovely. We had icicles hanging from the trees and rainbows sparkling. And I opened my heart just a little because you know, Brian, when we're so filled with grief, most of the time we can't feel anything except for the grief. But I opened my heart just a little and I said, thank you, universe, for a beautiful day. I closed my eyes. And there was my brother David. Now, I was not psychic. I wasn't spiritual. I had never seen or heard of anything like this, but it was real. And he was in human form, wearing a black and red plaid flannel shirt, dungarees, and sandals. And I started to talk with him and then realized within a second that I could send thought. He was great. I was fantastic. I looked to the right, and there were my grandparents, Abe and Bessie Dole from Wellesley, Massachusetts, holding hands like they always did. They had passed about 10 years ago. Beside them was one of David's best friends, Edward, who had passed about 6 months ago. Beside Edward was a friend of mine, Holly, who had passed 20 years ago from a motor vehicle accident. And the story goes on. But it was the first time that I truly believed that life was eternal. And I went to look for a teacher. I said, I've got to know how to communicate with my brother again. I found a shaman, whole lot of synchronicity about that. And she happened to live in Reading, Pennsylvania, and she used Reiki. And so she used Reiki. I learned how to communicate with my brother. I still communicate with him to this day. And Reiki absolutely enhances our ability to communicate with our loved ones living beyond.
Yeah, and that's something I didn't know until I learned it from you and I took your Reiki course. Because I know a lot of people might say, well, I'm not interested in becoming a Reiki practitioner in terms of healing people medically. And that's all I've ever heard of Reiki as being used for. But I think a lot of people would be a lot more interested in how I can use Reiki to communicate with people in spirit.
You know, Brian, if you ask any Reiki master if they have had communication with spirits, I would be shocked if they said no. But people don't talk about it because, you know, it's a little considered far out. And so it's been very interesting. I absolutely talk about it all the time. And when I teach Reiki, I teach it a lot to medical professionals. And so I'm bringing that whole concept of Reiki to the medical professional realm. And want me to tell you a little story about how this works as far as the after-death communication?
Yeah.
So I was teaching it at the American Occupational Therapy Association annual conference, 2015, 2016, and then since then. In 2017, Duquesne University calls me up, and they're in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And they said, hey, Beck, can you come and teach Reiki to our graduating occupational therapy students? We'd like to have you teach the whole class. And I said, yes, that would be awesome. They said, we've had a couple of our faculty attend your program, and we wanted to have it here. So I walked into Duquesne University, and I had already been there the day before because when I do in-person training, I like to set up the room very pretty and such. So I walked in, and there were 44 occupational therapy students there. And I said, hi, I'm Becky Austill-Clausen. I'm here to teach you Reiki. How many of you are familiar with Reiki? And Brian, not one person raised their hand. And I'm like, whoa, this is going to be sort of interesting. What Duquesne did is the next day they partnered with the Pittsburgh chapter of occupational therapy. And so within one weekend, 70 people were trained in what's called Reiki level 1. That's when you get your Reiki energy activated. Out of those 70 people, 20% had after-death communication experiences. Now, most of these had never even heard the word Reiki. 15 people receive communication from their deceased loved ones. And I thought, all right. Now, normally when I do it, I get a couple, but this time it was 15. And just on that concept, the next year I went to Lily Dale, and Lily Dale is Lily Dale, Pennsylvania. And it's the largest community of psychics and mediums in the country. And it's what's called a spiritualist assembly. First spiritual assembly. I think it started 1890. And so there was a whole group of Reiki masters and myself, and we do a lot of work in hospice, and which is very lovely. It works very, very nicely. And so we went to Lily Dale. Lily Dale offers free Reiki every single day in the summer in their, what they call their healing temple. And I thought, okay, if Lily Dale is offering Reiki, and I had that incredible experience at Duquesne with 20% of 70 people having after-death communication, Reiki really does enhance after-death communication. The next year, I was honored, just honored to teach after-death communication at Lily Dale, and I certainly included a lot of Reiki concepts. So it really does work, and it's not just with me. You can take Reiki from anybody. And if you ask the Reiki Master, do you think it enhances or facilitates after-death communication? I absolutely think you'll get a yes.
Yeah, well, as you said, it's energy, and we know that we're all energy, and the spirit world, as we call it, is energetic. And it's a matter of aligning those energies to make that connection is the way I kind of look at it now. It's almost like, I think, tuning a radio receiver, right? You've got to get tuned into that right frequency, which certainly you've been able to do since that spontaneous event you had with your brother David.
Perfect, Brian. That was an excellent explanation. That's exactly what happens. Reiki raises our vibrational energetic awareness so that we can connect with all. Because as you said so beautifully, energy is connected. And so there's not much difference between our life here on earth and life in the afterlife. And so Reiki raises our ability to connect with our loved ones by raising that vibrational energy.
So, I think a lot of us think of Reiki as kind of mystical and Eastern, and, it must be hard to learn and take years to practice. So what's the process of learning Reiki?
Oh, good question. I teach it in one day. In one day, you can learn Reiki. And what happens is that the first day, you activate your Reiki energy. And it's a lovely little ceremony. It takes approximately 1 minute. And it's what's called an attunement to yourself, an attunement to your own Reiki energy. And then I immediately follow it up by 3 experiential sessions where you give and receive Reiki one-on-one, so that you get to receive it from one person, then you send it back to that person, and you talk about it during both that times. And you can do this online, which is really quite interesting, or you can do it in person. The second day of Reiki, which you don't have to take, you learn how to do Reiki in just one day. But the second day of Reiki, that's when you understand why and how it works. And we're so, again, biomechanical in our world. It helps for our mind to understand, now, how is it that this works? And so that second day is highly recommended, but you don't have to have it. And then that second day, at least for me, I do another 3 experiential sessions, one-on-one, where you actually practice receiving and sharing Reiki. And then it's up to you to continue it on your own. The first thing you learn, day 1 is self-Reiki. And so you learn how to give yourself Reiki, because if we can help ourselves heal, we're much better facilitators for helping others heal as well.
Absolutely. And I do want to interject here. I have taken the workshop, the 2-day workshop, and it's incredible. It's the having that experience, the one-on-one experiences that we did. I think everybody, at least in the groups that I was in, were kind of shocked. It's like, wow, there's something happening here. When you were giving it and when you were receiving it, and having that interaction, really, I think helps to boost your confidence that is this. There's something actually, something's happening.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey there, something I want to tell you about today. My podcast platform, Buzzsprout, has recently made it easier for me to allow you to support me financially. Go to www.grieftogrowth.com/subscribe. That's grief2growth.com/subscribe. And once you're there, you can sign up to support me financially. Now, you can do it for as little as $3 a month, or of course, as much as you'd like. If you do that, you'll get access to bonus episodes, and you'll see those in the regular feed. They'll have a lock on them. But when you become a subscriber, you'll actually get access to your own private feed, and you'll be able to listen to the regular podcast along with the bonus podcast for the subscribers. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for sharing the podcast. And I want to thank those of you who support me financially. Have a great day, and on to the episode.
It is incredible. And I love teaching it because it is such a pleasure to see people's awareness grow about their ability to help themselves heal. And by the end of the day, by the end of one day, you can tell the difference between one person's energy versus another person's energy, and certainly how to help yourself heal as well. The trick of this whole thing is to keep practicing. And I don't mean you have to do it all the time, but the more you practice, the better you get. And Brian, to have you attending there, it was so fun to have you in that class. It was really just a huge honor to have you there.
Yeah, I was, like I said, I was glad to be there, and it really, when people, again, I think people think of Reiki as like, okay, well, this is going to be if someone's sick, I'm going to go to the hospital and lay hands on them or something. But as you learn in the class, you can do Reiki on your dog, you can do Reiki on yourself if you're having minor issues, or just to raise your own energy level, and just to cleanse your own energy body. And these are all the things that you teach in the class.
It is. Yes, that's exactly correct. And it's so fun to me when we're doing it online, for example. Animals just come, and the person who's receiving the Reiki, they always say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, my dog's here, or my cat's here, or whatever." And I'm like, "Don't worry, it's totally fine. That animal knows that you're receiving or sharing Reiki, and they want to receive it also." It is quite fascinating, and you can see it, like it actually is visible for your awareness to expand and grow. And you can tell the difference between before you had Reiki and after you had Reiki. It's a fun practice.
And I know that you're teaching this to medical professionals, so I assume that there must be some research on Reiki that Western minds can say, okay, well, this is real.
Well, that's a very good question, Brian. And when I teach it to medical professionals, I also teach it to everybody. So my concentration is medical professionals, but until 2019, there were not, in my opinion, very good Reiki research studies. But in 2019, a wonderful, what's called a large-scale Reiki research study happened, and you all can get it. You can just search Google 2019 Dyer. That's one of the authors, Dyer. 2019 Dyer large-scale Reiki study, Reiki. So it's 2019 Dyer large-scale Reiki study. And so what happened was and this was published in the American Journal of Complementary and Alternative Medicine. And so what happened was there was 1,411 people across the United States that received one session of Reiki. Reiki was provided across the United States by 99 Reiki Masters, and they were all trained by the same organization. It's the organization that William Rand started, called the International Center for Reiki Training. So you had some commonality with how everybody was trained.
Mm-hmm.
Within one session, statistically significant results with a decrease in pain, anxiety, depression, and an increase in well-being occurred with a single session of Reiki. So that is really a nice study with 1,411 subjects receiving just one session of Reiki.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I don't know. It used to be amazing to me. Now it's not so much anymore, because I'm learning that this is normal. This is natural, that we've been doing this type of healing for thousands of years. And we've just gotten to this mentality now that if we don't take a pill or operate on somebody, we haven't done anything. I can't remember the exact study, but they were doing, I don't know if it was a study on prayer or intention, but they were actually doing they would not even do surgery on people, like people that had knee pain, and they would think they had surgery, and they were as a placebo effect over, and people were getting over their knee pain just because they were being prayed for. So this psychic stuff, we want to call it energy healing, has been studied quite a bit, not just Reiki specifically, and proven to be effective.
It is. And it's interesting that you chose knee pain, because knee pain actually has responded very well to Reiki. And I had a right knee replacement in, I think it was 2019. And I had lots of Reiki being provided. And I got this at Bryn Mawr Hospital, Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that Bryn Mawr had Reiki professionals working there. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I got this scheduled, I called the hospital and said, could I please talk to someone that is involved with Reiki at your hospital? Well, Brian, this hospital has 44 Reiki practitioners that are all nurses, and they provide time for nurses to provide Reiki during their nursing schedule. And they have some nice criteria, like you can't, it's for a whole like an 8-hour period of time where a nurse that is working at Bryn Mawr will also provide Reiki, but they can't be a nurse before their session, before their time of providing Reiki, nor after. You want to be a dedicated Reiki practitioner during that time. So after I had my total knee replacement, the next day, 9:00, knock on the door. I was, still in the hospital, and it was the Reiki nurse, and she gave me a half-hour Reiki session. And I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. I gave myself Reiki every single day. Traditionally, with a total knee replacement, it takes anywhere from 2 to 3 months where you're fully independent. I was fully independent, walking with no support, in 5 weeks.
Wow.
So it's I attribute it to Reiki. I mean, I worked this thing, but it works. It's amazing.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. So, for someone who wants to learn more about Reiki before they commit to actually taking a course and getting certified, what would you recommend?
Sure. It's a good question. I'm teaching a free webinar, and it's being done on Saturday, February 25th from 1 to 2:30 p.m. Eastern time, and it's free. And it's called Reiki Works. And Brian, you've got the link, and it'd be great fun to have some of your folks attend this free webinar. And what happens is we talk about 3 main principles of Reiki. And then during that time, I introduce the Reiki Immersion online program. And these are additional 1 day. Now you do pay to become a Reiki practitioner. You get a certificate, and these are, as a matter of fact, they're approved by the National Board for Certification in Occupational Therapy for 6.0 contact hours for each class. So we have lots of medical professionals, OTs, and anybody that's interested in coming. But anyway, during this free webinar, Reiki Works, I introduce the The certificate provided 1-day Reiki training course called Reiki Immersion Online. And the way I do that is that's going to be held on Saturday, March 25th is Reiki Level 1. And that's where you get your Reiki energy activated. Plus you learn self-Reiki and you have these 3 experiential sessions. And then the very next day on Sunday, and so that's March 26th. Just want to make sure. Yep, March 26th, 2023. That's when you learn how and why Reiki works. You learn additional sound healing concepts that work very nicely with Reiki. We talk about crystals, and you have 3 more experiential one-on-one sessions. And I use Zoom breakout rooms and with just 2 people in a room. So it works very, very well. And my recommended way to learn Reiki is to first take Reiki Level 1, and if you can, immediately take Reiki Level 2, because that's all you need. You don't need anything else. But if you can only take one, just do that. And so that is what happens on the free webinar Reiki Works on February 25th, 2023.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I've had the experience of going through it. People might question, well, how does it work remotely? And sometimes, we have these questions, and you and I kind of smile because we know absolutely energy is energy. You can do it from anywhere. But yeah, the course is super effective. It's a lot of fun. Anybody listening, you can tell Becky's a lot of fun. She brings that energy to it, and the experience. I've never taken Reiki from anybody else, but I loved the breakout rooms as much as anything else, and being there with other people that were all like getting wide-eyed, like what the experience was. And
I'm sorry, keep going.
No, well, I want to also just point out, it's not just for professionals. It's not just for people who want to do it for money. And I found out recently that a lot of people have taken Reiki and do it on themselves and their family.
Yes, it works for yourself, family, friends, clients, colleagues, animals, even plants. It's absolutely fantastic. People ask me, they say, why does online Reiki work? And quite frankly, I wasn't a big fan of online Reiki until we had this whole COVID production. And I had all my classes, in-person classes, canceled. And I'm like, wow, this is really sort of interesting. Now what's going to happen? And so I started doing Reiki online. And I had done a little bit, but one of the very first times that I did a Reiki treatment session online, what happens is you beam the energy. So I beam the energy to the person if I can see them. Now, you don't have to do it in person, but I was doing it, Zoom, so I can actually see the person. And about 20 minutes into this session, the woman who I'd never met before, it felt like she had a pain in her right knee. And so I sent her healing Reiki. Her body is the one that does the own healing. And after about 4 to 5 minutes, the pain went away. And so I write down on my yellow pad, which I always have these yellow pads, pain in right knee. About 5 minutes later, it felt like she was receiving the energy so well. It really seemed like she was levitating above the bed, because we were doing this in her bedroom, and she had set the screen so that I could see her. It felt like she was levitating above the bed. So we finished this session about 45 minutes. And I said, how are you doing? And she goes, well, Becky, I didn't tell you this when we started, but I had a pain in my right knee. And I held up my yellow pad and where it said right knee pain. And I said, well, how are you feeling emotionally? And she said, I felt like I was dancing on air. And I held up that yellow pad again that said levitating above the bed. And at that point, I thought, okay, yes, Reiki absolutely can not only be taught, but experienced online. And using the Zoom breakout rooms, like that absolutely works. Because in the past, I had a fair amount of people come and take my in-person classes, but they'd already had online. And I'm like, why are you doing this again? And they said, I want to be able to experience it. But with Reiki, in Reiki Level 2, you learn long distance healing, which, as you mentioned, is very similar to prayer. It's thought, and thought has energy. And so you're sending long distance energy through the internet, or you're sending long distance energy just by being quiet and focusing and being mindful and sending your Reiki energy, your Reiki healing energy to that person. And it works.
Yeah. And the thing is, from a scientific perspective, if you want to call it that, we know in spirit there is no time or distance. So everything is instantaneous. So we marvel at the fact that Reiki works long distance. There is no mediumship we know works over the internet, and thought is there's some debate. Does thought travel faster than the speed of sound? And I think it's instantaneous. I think thought does travel faster than the speed of sound. So the distance doesn't make a difference. And it's cool because when you're doing the beaming thing, you can feel the energy coming out of your hands. It's weird. It's kind of wild.
Brian, you are so fun and you're so smart. I love that concept that there is no time. And, being an OT, we have 30-minute sessions traditionally. And so I'm like, how can there be no time? Like, that took me years to try to figure out. But if we live eternally, which I absolutely, positively, without a doubt, recognize and understand and accept, we do live eternally. We are eternal beings. So therefore, time is just a construct here on earth. Like, there is no time. So yes, we can beam that energy because there's no time. And we can send love to our loved ones at any time because there's no time. So awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll put in the notes links to the webinar and to the class itself. I'm also going to set up a page on my website. So it'll be grieftogrowth.com/Reiki. You can go there and the links will be there as well. As Becky said, the webinar itself is free. So you can go there, learn more about Reiki, decide whether you want to take the course or not, which is definitely worthwhile, even if you're not planning on becoming a practicing, Reiki Master. And I took it, I guess it's been a couple of years ago, I think now. And I plan to take it again.
It's great. I would love to have you or your followers, you've already taken it. But if people have taken Reiki in the past and want a refresher, it works really well as a refresher. Sometimes when I say all of this, I think people are going to think I'm nuts, but it actually works. And I'm really pleased that for the last couple of years, when I've done Reiki immersion online, I always do an end of the day Zoom poll, and it's blind. Like, people don't know what anybody else is saying. And we are averaging 98% excellent, very good effectiveness for all the Reiki trainings. And so it is an effective modality to decrease stress, pain, anxiety, and increase your sense of well-being. It's really quite effective. And Brian, thank you so much for having me talk about it.
I love having you here. And, people can tell you're a very down-to-earth person. You're an occupational therapist. You're rationally minded. And, a lot of us that are rationally minded, we almost feel like we have to apologize for believing in the afterlife, for believing in things like Reiki, because the materialist mindset has taken such a hold over our society. I was just talking with a client yesterday, and the guy goes, I really like you because you're rational, and I really want to believe this stuff, but it's not scientific. And I push back against that. It is scientific. It has been studied. There are peer-reviewed studies about energy healing and psi phenomenon and all of this stuff. And we need to stop letting people make us feel timid about believing it.
Well said. I totally agree. And not only are there studies about Reiki and complementary modalities, there's the Bigelow Awards where they actually prove scientifically that the afterlife is real. It really is a very interesting time for us to be living on this world and using Reiki for ourselves to help us heal during the chaos that we're experiencing these days, and helping others heal is absolutely a very easy way to help our lives improve. So, Brian, again, thank you for being totally awesome. I enjoy you and your followers immensely.
Becky, thanks for being here. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Lots of love to you always and forever. Thank you very much.
Hi there. I hope you enjoyed this latest episode of the podcast, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. What questions came up for you? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? I invite you to visit us at grieftogrowth.circle.so. That's growth2 to continue the conversation with me and with other listeners. It's a space to sound off, to share reactions, and to go deeper into the topics from the show. I look forward to chatting more, and I hope to see you there.